a better word, nice. It's a nice thing. I mean, some of you sell HR. HR is interesting, but it's not nice.
I'd second that.
There's a limit. When you're sitting next to somebody at a dinner party table, if you get invited, of course, if you're in HR, and you say you're in HR, you know, it's just occasionally they turn the other way, don't they?
They sure do.
Whereas with wine, there was an immediate, you know, it's the opposite. People are all, well, not everybody, lots of people who are teetotal don't want to talk about wine, and why should they? Because wine boards can be really boring. But for me, there was that hedonistic element. So I thought, this is good. So I got dragged into the business and joined the family business. After about 10 years, as often happens with family businesses, the business split up because I couldn't work with my uncle, and he couldn't work with me, and my father wasn't happy with the situation. So it all split up, and I formed my own little business, Huntsbridge, in '94. So we've been going 20 and a few years since then. So we run a private business now. It's not now a family business, it's a private business. And I say it's not a family business because it's my wife and I, so we are a family, and we have 2 kids, but our 2 kids will not join the business. They have no intention to join the business, and I'm absolutely sure that they won't join the business. So there is no sense that it will actually carry on forever. We're not building it up for some, you know, we're not in the dynasty world. That's not the plan. But it is a private business, and so some of the things that I'm going to say now might seem a little, some of you will think they're a bit self-indulgent, or a bit easy for me to say because I run a private business, and you may or may not run a private business or be involved with private businesses. And so maybe I'm in an overprivileged position, and that allows me to say some things that are not relevant to everybody. But anyway, I can only say what I say. So that's the first way that we're traditional. I better do these things in the right order. So the second area that we're traditional is that our business in the end is all about service. And I think generally the world is moving at the moment to a world of convenience and efficiency and speed and, you know, all those other good things, you know, all positive for most businesses. But in order for us to survive, in order for us to keep Dave's goodwill as a customer, then in the end it's about service in the most traditional sense. Our business, like or our industry, like every industry, is incredibly competitive. You know, there are a ridiculous number of pubs and restaurants and hotels, and you may know, some of you will definitely know, that most of them don't make any money. Most of them are not profitable. And our industry, I don't know what the statistics are. I don't know if you know what the statistics are. But the turnover in the end, at some point, is enormous of ownership through the businesses. Because everybody seems to want to, not everybody, a lot of people seem to want to be involved in our industry, partly for the reasons that I talked about earlier, because it sounds like a nice thing to be involved with, you know, food and drink, how lovely is that, looking after people. But for a reason, a lot of them don't survive. So how do we keep going? What's our thing that makes us special? Well, we do have a couple of things that make us special, and wine is one of them. It's you know, from the blurb, I'm a master of wine. I'm one of only 2 in the wine industry, and so we have a little reputation as a winey place, and we've got a wine shop in the hotel. That is important to us. That's our little. That is our USP, I suppose. But as a USP, it's not a very good one, because the number of people who are genuinely interested in wine is tiny. And the number of people in the Huntingdonshire area who are genuinely interested in wine, really passionate about it, that would actually drive around this ring road on a Monday morning at 8 a.m. Pretty small number, actually, just to get a bottle of wine. When you can get really quite nice wine in supermarkets, and now that we've got every single supermarket apart from the best one that's leaving, then you know, there's so many options to buy decent wine. And so why come to us? But I still like it as a USP because it's you. it's the SP isn't so strong, but it's very unique. And I think the unique bit, when you're really small like we are, the unique bit is important. But that won't make us survive. What will make us survive is the service thing. And what we try and offer, and I say try because we fail every day, but what we try and offer is civilization, is something that is better than, well, better, that sounds awful, something that is a break from people's normal life, and that is a moment of pleasure in the day, whether you're having a business meeting, or whether you're it's Valentine's Day and you're moving house, some extraordinary coincidence, or whether you're coming for an overnight romp, or whatever it is that you're coming here for. The idea is that it should be pleasurable. And I generally think that even in our industry, that's forgotten sometimes. I think that people think that it's okay to just provide the product and that's enough, you know, to give people food and drink efficiently and conveniently, that's okay. And I'm sure if you really get it right, like Wetherspoons really get it right and really get their price right, then that does work. It does work for them. But again, if you're small and independent, what can you do to make people actually come to you and spend the quite large amounts of money that you often ask them to spend? What will keep them coming? I think it has to be that they feel that they get that, you know, to use all the old-fashioned cliches, they get the warm and cuddly feeling about the experience. And wine may be a tiny part of that. Green chairs may be a tiny part of that. But in the end, the most important thing are the people, and the people who are greeting you and who are looking after you and saying goodbye to you. And as I said, that we have, which I'll talk about in a moment, we have a lot of people, and they can and will make mistakes, but the culture of the place has to be such that they all understand that what we're doing is trying to give people pleasure, not just a service. We're trying to give them more than that. We're trying to actually give them pleasure. So that's traditional, old-fashioned thing number two. Oh yeah, and then the third thing, traditional thing, is to say that how do you achieve that? How do you get the team to have that culture? And I think, and again, I don't know if this is, because I've worked in other industries, I don't know if this is normal, but I sense that it's not. And certainly, talking to my children, who both were working in one in industry, I suppose you would say, food industry, and the other as a teacher, I sense that this is often lacking. Is that in order to get your team to have the right, the attitude that you want, the key word for me anyway, the key thing is mutual respect. So you need, I think as a person who runs a business, the most important thing is that you show, or one shows, the people who work for you enough respect that they respect you back. It's not about, I think people worry as business leaders what car they drive, or how they look, or I don't know, how successful the business is, or what speeches they give, or I don't know, all sorts of other things. In the end, I think it's about how you actually talk to the team and how much you talk to the team, which doesn't mean too much either, but it's about acknowledgement of everybody who works for you, acknowledgement of them as human beings, and a feeling, giving them the feeling that actually there is no sense in which, you know, they may be an employee because that's the official term, you know, that's the HR term, employee, but yeah, or team member, or any of those things. But actually, all of those phrases that people come up with, so many big firms say, let's not call them employees now, let's call them team members. Great, fine, good idea. Probably is a good idea, but it doesn't really matter, because what really matters is how they feel about themselves in that role, whether they feel they're respected as a person, even if they are washing up. We have a Spanish young man, who's washing up for us, who's here because his girlfriend, I think, or wife, I ought to know that, but anyway, works in Hinchinbrook, and she's got a good job there, And in Spain, even though I believe the economy is getting better, it's still really tough in Spain. So, and his English is terrible. So for the moment, you know, this is his limit. He's come over to be with her, and he's washing up. He's far too qualified to wash up, but he washes up because that's what he does. So we didn't know that when you first meet him, when you first talk to him. You don't know who you assume that people washing up are going to be people who are not capable of doing anything else. You know, people who are just, you know, severely limited in their potential. This person is not severely limited in their potential at all, and actually then you think, well, it's still actually fairly irrelevant whether they're severely limited in their potential or not. They have to be treated with respect, and it's not complicated. It's all I'm saying. It's not. I don't think it's difficult to achieve what we're talking about. So that's the old-fashioned bit. I wanted to now just do a little bit about challenges and weaknesses, and then a little bit about hopefully strengths and success. So what are our challenges and weaknesses as in our business, as I see it? I'm sure I don't see them all. The first is the fact that we have 75 staff here at the Old Bridge. We're a 24-bedroom hotel with 75 staff. Makes it sound like Raffles of Singapore or one of those sort of places, you know, threes. Well, but as most of you know, because you've been before, it's not like that, because actually, although we're a 24-bedroom hotel, we're very busy on the ground floor. You know, our main thing is you know, teas and coffees and snacks and the odd wedding and all that stuff. So we're quite a busy little place. But 75 staff is still an awful lot of staff. And the problem with having 75 staff is that 75, a minimum of 75 links in the chain. They don't all work at the same time, obviously a lot of part-time. And if you've got that many links in the chain's going to break. And it breaks every day. And so our main issue is actually repairing the chain. That's a key part of the management job, is repairing the chain. But it is really hard, and it will probably never change. Because of national living wage, which is a good thing, we are always trying to think of more efficient ways of running the business. But I suspect that in 5 years' time, I'll still be running a 24-bedroom hotel with 75 staff. Might be up a bit or down a bit, depending on how many part-timers we have. But we are very labour-intensive in the way that we do things. And that's a weakness. It's a weakness in terms of productivity and you know, therefore profitability, but it's a weakness in terms of quality, because trying to have 75 staff all running in the same direction is really hard. So that's our first problem. The second problem is us, and Dave knows this because he asked me about it with sort of around the houses, which is that we're very product driven and not very marketing driven. So because I'm an obsessive, because that's why I'm good at wine, you need to be a bit obsessive to be good at wine, then I spend most of my time worrying about the product and trying to improve the product. I'm told, if you want to be a really successful business person, the really successful business people are good at seeing the bigger picture. And I'm sure other people have sat here probably saying, look at the bigger picture, don't get too involved in the detail. Well, I think I can't do that. We do, of course, we try and look at the bigger picture. But in the end of the day, for us, it's all about product. And actually, although this is a weakness from our point of view as a business, I still think it's probably the key to our success as a small individual hotel restaurant with a wine shop in it. If we stop worrying about the product and stop worrying about the detail, maybe, this is my theory anyway, it's how I justify it, maybe that's the point at which we start to lose our, you know, what we have. But in terms of the future, I think it is probably a weakness. Yeah, the attention to detail definitely brings it back. Our third weakness and challenge is, I'm trying to think of the best way, well, why don't I just say, so if I just use the word TripAdvisor, then that starts you thinking. So the world has changed because of the internet in many ways, and TripAdvisor is not all powerful. It is powerful, but it represents a change in our customers and a change in the way that the world thinks about everything, but particularly hospitality, that we have to be aware of, but be very careful with. So there is now I call it howling, there's a lot of howling that goes on. The howling is sometimes well placed, and sometimes it's entirely ignorant. But it's still howling, and it's now public. It used to be that, and I still occasionally get them, and they're lovely when I get them. It used to be that I get handwritten letters from, I don't know if you ever listened to that programme on the radio called Mornington Crescent, or whatever it's called, or what's it called, How I Got News for You, and they always have Mrs. Norris from Trellis Avenue, or whatever, who always sends in her letter, and handwritten letters telling me what she did and didn't like. And they're sometimes completely mad, and sometimes they're really important. But the public endorsement or vilification that goes on is something completely new for us. And we're all, in our industry, learning how to handle this. And I think actually the public are learning how to handle it, because when you look up, spending their time, and I know most of you have probably done it, but spending a lot of time after going somewhere airing your personal views about. They only read the bad reviews anyway, don't they? So those are our I think TripAdvisor and that whole world is a challenge for us. What are our strengths and the key to our future success? Well, I think the first thing that I think is a strength for us at our size is that we have managed to, over the years since the family business broke up and I formed my own business, we've managed to minimise the admin. I think businesses, as they get bigger, tend to have more layers of management, and they tend to have more people in administration. We have nobody in administration. That's not true, that's a lie. We have 2 part-time people, Helen and Teresa, who do our accounts. Everybody else in the business is in sales. I would never say that, because that sounds like sort of a very salesman-y thing to say, but I thought of it this morning as something as a sort of line. What I mean by that is that everybody is either taking the booking for the meal, or preparing the meal, or serving the meal, or washing up afterwards. And again, I mean that in inverted commas, because we don't just do meals, we do bottles of wine, we do other stuff. But we don't have an HR person. We obviously use HR consultants, who are very important people, as we need them. And we don't have, I don't have a secretary. I do have a PA, but she actually works in the wine shop. That's her main job, is working in the wine shop. She doesn't work for me. So we don't have anybody who is not involved in, proper stuff. I think in that world of, in a labour-intensive world, when you've got 75 staff for 23 bedrooms, 24 bedrooms, then I think that is a strength for us. It may be part of the reason why we'll never become a world-beating hotel chain, and I'll never have a yacht. But I think it's really important. The second thing is that I think we've got to the point where we've learned how to deal with internal information. Speaking to people who work in bigger companies, mainly wine companies that I know, but it might be otherwise, people who services like Granite 5 who some used to work for. It seems to me that often within companies, particularly because of the internet and email, there's a huge amount of internal information being passed around. Most of you actually work either for yourselves or in small businesses, so you don't have this problem. Some people I know even work in small businesses and have this problem, but I think it's really important to be able to have the right information, but not too much of it. So we do generate. I have literally hundreds of emails personally to answer every day, and we do generate quite a lot of internal communication. But we've managed to get it down for each key area. We've managed to get it down to one piece of key information a day. So in other words, the wine shop has literally its daily handover, which is quite long, and there is quite a lot on it, and it has 2 attachments to it. But it is one information. So if you're off and you want to know, and you're part of the wine shop team, and you want to keep up, you have to open one email and read through it, and everything's on there. You probably don't read it all, you probably don't. But that's where it is. And I can actually say, on 3 days later, when somebody comes back, having been off 2 days, and then they say, oh, haven't we got any Chateau Kismiquet? So didn't you read the handover on Monday? Because that's in, running it out of stock is in item 4 of that. So we've managed to get that down to 1. And I think that drive towards minimising communication so that people are then free to do what actually matters, which is making stuff, serving stuff, or washing stuff up, or being off and having a nice time. I think that's really, really important, and I think that's one step forward that we've made. And very similarly, the same applies to meetings. Nobody ever has more than one meeting a day, and no meeting ever lasts more than an hour. So we are very low on very low key on meetings. I'm not saying meetings are not important. If you don't have some meetings, then people don't feel communicated with. So partly it's a psychological thing to make people feel that they are being communicated with to have a meeting. But generally, I think meetings are overrated. So that's first thing. Second thing, and this is, I suppose, in the area, this is running a traditional business in a modern world, where we're a little bit modern. You know all the ways we're not very modern. But one of the ways that we're a little bit modern, I think, or I'd like to think, is speed of response. So the one thing that the internet has done, obviously, is meant that people communicate, as I just implied, too much, but they communicate quickly. And I think people want a quick response. I know a chap who runs a champagne company in London, or I met a chap the other day, I didn't know him, who runs a champagne company in London, and I was talking to him, and he seemed like a real expert in champagne. He is an expert in champagne, but his USP, again, is not being an expert in champagne, and it's not actually doing anything different. I thought he'd be selling lots of quirky, weird champagnes from small growers that I'd never heard of. His main selling champagnes are Verclico and all the other ones that you probably have heard of, or Krug and other famous ones. But what he does in London is that he has a warehouse somewhere that's not too far out, and if you are, and there are plenty of people like this in London, if you're somebody who wants to give your client an expensive bottle of champagne, or a mid-price bottle of champagne, and you want it now, literally, you're in the meeting, it's going well, you want that champagne now, or by tonight, or you want it in a certain place at a certain time, he will get that. He will get that done. And I said, well, surely if you rang up Majestic or Berry Brothers and Rudd or Harrods, they can't do it. They can't get it there in an hour. He will get the stuff to you, and he holds the stock as well. That's the other point, is that all the others have outsourced everything, so everything's in a bonded warehouse in Heathrow or something. No, he's got the stock ready. You ring him up, dog hurry on, we're doing it now. So he's providing a service which is all about speed of response. We're not remotely in that league, but the key point is that if you write me a complaint letter, then you'll get a personal response from me. Literally as soon as my wife will let me, stop looking at when we're looking at on holiday or whatever. But I've been on holiday for a week, and you have to, despite what I said about not much communication, I think that the key people in charge have to be able to respond quickly, and then that culture has to go down to the rest of your team, so that people will actually, that the sales team and everybody else will respond quickly. So that's the modern thing. Finally, three things that I think are important to our future success. Which should I start with? I suppose the final one, it harks back to what I said at the beginning about being a place where or the old bridge, being a place which should offer a moment of civilization to people, a moment of pleasure to people. I think it's important that whatever product that you sell, if you are selling something you could call a product, I suppose, rather than that's entirely a service. I think it's really helpful for us that we're providing, or maybe we're just lucky, but we're providing a product that is aspirational but not out of reach. It's that combination, I think, that's important, because I think that's what we all want. I think what most people want. Most people want something slightly better, and slightly better often is going to cost a bit more, but on the other hand it can't be stratospheric. So we'd all like a better pair of shoes, but the £500 pair of shoes, you're just never going to go there. Or, sorry, most of us, male people, are never going to go there. And I think that's really, really important. And I think the most important thing about the product, apart from being aspirational but not out of reach, is to have some breadth. If you're in a big urban space, London, being perhaps the only one, or maybe Manchester, in the UK, then you can be really niche, can't you? And the internet is actually very exciting, I think, because that's enabled people to be really niche. I know a guy who's again, don't know, I know of a person who is an antiquarian bookseller whose business was clearly going to die. But since the internet, he's fine. Because if you're that niche, it's only with our little wine shop, which is only a small part of our business, but every couple of days we get an inquiry for one of our weirdest and probably most expensive wines from someone in John Groves or literally miles away. He doesn't know us, knows nothing about us, but they've Googled, Chateau Dave, and up it comes as us. We are one of the 2 people in the country that have Chateau Dave. 1984. So we send off the two bottles of Chateau Dave, which are completely knackered in 1967 on floor, to John Groves, and the same applies to booksellers and all the rest of it. But otherwise, if you're not in that world, and that's a small part of our business, if you're in the normal world of providing HR or providing hotel services or hospitality, whatever, then I think you have to have, you can't be, if you try and please all the people all the time, I think you've got no chance. But I think you do have to try and please a goodly number of the people most of the time, and finding that exact balance, finding what your market is, which I don't think you should spend too much time thinking about. I think you just, you do it, you provide a product that you think is good enough that will appeal to those people. I think that's really important, and I think in our industry, one of the mistakes that a lot of people are making is trying to be too niche. There is, when my daughter was at university and did language, so she spent a bit of time in Paris doing one of those courses, and we went out to see her a couple of times, so you got to know the centre quite well. And I always remember that there was one little cafe that only served coffee, and it refused to give you milk. It was always just black coffee, no tea, and its only product was a Portuguese custard tart in Paris. There was a queue. Brilliant, just a queue all the time. Man out the back bringing these Portuguese custard tarts through. Fantastic business. Him and her business. Perfect. Brilliant. And you really, I have to say, we all envy those businesses, because to be so niche and therefore be so good at what you do, the best Portuguese custard tart in Paris, flag, but it was, anyway, but that's, when our chain breaks, I wish I had a niche business. But actually I know that I can't have a niche business if I want to be successful in the long term. I have to be able to do a little bit of a lot of stuff, and then if any of it falls away, you've still got quite a lot left. The last 2 things relate to each other. The first one is a serious business thing, which is that I genuinely believe that that business is not all about growth. And obviously that's controversial, and my son-in-law, who's an economist, doesn't agree with me. But when in 2007 we sold our pub restaurants, we had 3 pub restaurants and we sold them. We've now got 1 back, but that was just by accident. When we sold the pub restaurants, so we became smaller, we became more profitable. And actually, 2 of the pub restaurants were profitable. But the Old Bridge became much more profitable. And we slimmed down our admin and all that stuff, and we are and were more profitable. So I think that growth is not everything. I think it's wildly exaggerated, and I think all these big companies that look at growth beyond everything, that's I don't know, that's to do with shareholders and things that most of us don't have to be involved with. So I don't think growth in itself, as in turnover growth, is everything. And going beyond that, and again, this is perhaps the really self-indulgent thing that someone like me can say, and maybe this is wrong to say it, but I don't even think that profit is everything. And I've been to lectures where people will say that profit, of course, is the key. A business, I think it's a truism now to say that a business exists to be profitable. Yes, of course it does. A business can't lose money. But the danger of being profitable and running any sort of business is that you always therefore want your profits to increase. And when they come on the radio and say Tesco's profits have fallen by 25% from 100 billion to 75 billion, and that's supposed to be significant. I'm sure I'm not the only one thinking, that's still lots of billions of pounds, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You know, that's really weird, isn't it? So to be profitable is important, but to increase your profits, I don't actually think is important. I think the key thing about business is knowing that you actually are able to survive, that your business is in a good enough state to be able to survive, and to be able to give what you want, and the team of people who are working with you, if it's your business, what they want. I really don't think that profit is the key, and so much so that with us, if it looks like it's going to be a profitable year, then we normally bring forward whatever is going to be our next investment thing, like knocking a hole in the next door room to make it lighter. You know, if we have a really good year, we will bring forward that plan in order to spend some more money in order to be less profitable. I think investment in a business like this, the investment that we do, we haven't talked about, but obviously it's a key part of what we do, the capital investment that we make is really important in our business, much more than the profit. So I genuinely think the profit is overstated, and I think people, it's very much the man in the pub sort of thing to do, isn't it? To talk about, it is a very male thing, I think, as well, to talk about the amount of profit that their business makes, whether it's their business or not. And I really believe that that's we were talking earlier, weren't we, about America, where that sort of thing is really important. I do think it's overstated, and the danger of saying that, just to repeat myself, is that people will then assume what I'm saying is, oh, you don't need to make profit. I'm not saying that at all. Of course, you've got to make profit, but do you need to keep increasing your profits? That's a question that nobody seems to dare to, or at least in bigger businesses, nobody seems to dare to ask, and I think that's wrong. So that's it. That's how we run our old-fashioned business in the modern world.
Great. Thank you very much.
That was great.
Are you going to have some more wine? Does anyone have any questions for John before we take a break for coffee? And
so you mentioned TripAdvisor in that, and that kind of neatly ties in with the whole breaking the traditional model into a more modern online model. Yeah. On the whole, do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing, people being able to so publicly broadcast their opinions on their experiences?
I think in humanity terms, it's a bad thing. For the same reason that Instagram, even though I use Instagram and like it, and my wife seems to adore it, that is a bad thing, because I think it's bad for people's egos. Particularly, it sounds, the old man says it's bad for the young, but I have a goddaughter who's 14, and she's going through what I would call a sort of Instagram, and excuse, this is a terrible thing to say, it's really non-PC, but it's almost like, she's not anorexic, but it's a sort of, it's whatever equivalent of Instagram anorexia. So it's this self thing, all about yourself and looking right on Instagram, and it's just awful to see what is happening to this very sweet young girl, and I'm sure we all know people like that. And in a funny way, and maybe it's invidious to make the comparison, but I think that TripAdvisor is like that, in that people, instead of actually going out to enjoy the meal, or enjoy their, no, you don't go out to enjoy it. You go out to enjoy an experience. You go out to enjoy the moment with, the two of you, which you seem to be able to remember, which is so nice, coming here on that day when you were looking somewhere, and it was the first time in Huntingdon. That's what you remember. Not actually thinking already about what you're going to write on TripAdvisor. When I was a bit depressed the other day because we had three nasty reviews in a row about our pub that we're taking over 3 washes and management. God, this is going to set us back, and I know the staff are going to be so depressed. One member of the staff looked up another restaurant in Cambridge, really posh restaurant, really good restaurant called Alimentum, much higher sort of level than we are. And they only looked up because there were the two people, the main people at Alimentum, had come out to us and had been at an event that we'd had at 3 Washes, and seemed like really nice people. And we talked to them about TripAdvisor, so we thought, well, we're going to have a quick look at how they're doing. Do they get some of this mud thrown at them too? And actually, it was worse for Alimentum. They get terrible reviews, And the reason that they get terrible reviews is that they have a Michelin star, which means that so people go with expectations. Now that's fine. If you go to a Michelin star restaurant, you're spending £70, £80 a head, £100 a head, as opposed to with us average spent with £35, £40 a head, which I appreciate is still a lot of money. Then if you go there, then you should have expectations. And on the way back with your partner or your friends, of course you're completely welcome to say, well, that was rubbish, I really didn't like the chicken or whatever. But when you broadcast it to the world, it seems to me that it's so much about you. It's so much about, so there was one chap who wrote this review of Alimentum that started off, I've been thinking about this all night. I didn't rush in writing my review because I really wanted to take my time before I set my opinions down. I'm thinking, who really cares what you're really doing or not? And then he started off with all this stuff. At one point he said something about the trout, comma, of which I have caught many over the years. This is not about you, it's mostly about the restaurant. I mean, the good thing is that comic moments like that, actually, well, anybody who reads it properly would see the comedy of it and think, well, this is a silly person.
What we need is a TripAdvisor advisor.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we used to look after a hotel in Norfolk, looking after their computers, and they actually had somebody who booked overnight online, as a special offer. The following morning, they came to check out and they said, we want a discount. Oh, was something wrong with the room? No, nothing wrong with the room. Anything wrong with your meal in the restaurant? No, that was fine. We want a discount or else we're going to put a bad review on TripAdvisor. I can't believe it, how people can literally blackmail.
Yeah. You can do that. We've had lots of that. Never quite as open as that, but we have had lots of that. And that's fine. But anyway, the point is that like Instagram, it's not going away. It's here.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do we all adapt to it? And the more ubiquitous it becomes and the more different options there are, and the less, as I said, at the moment TripAdvisor has a bit too much power, because that is, if you Google the Old Bridge, it'll be Old Bridge, and then, or first of all it'll be bookings.com, even more annoying, but only because of the commission thing, and then whatever, and then, so it's right up there. There needs to be a few more, so that it's all a bit more split up, and then there needs to be injected into it just a little bit more humour, genuine humour, and a bit more lightness of tone. People at the moment are taking themselves and the whole thing so seriously. I said earlier, we're in the business of providing pleasure. So did we have quite a nice time, a very nice time, or did we have a really bad time? Oh, first world problems. This is really. I know it's cash and I know it's money, and we've taken money from people, so I shouldn't be disrespectful about that. But I think there needs to be a lighter approach to the whole thing. So whether I personally think it's a bad thing, but that's irrelevant. So that's my answer to your question, because it's here, and I think reviews will go on, and there'll be lots of them. The good news, there will be so many of them in a while that most of them will stop even looking at them, because you'll be completely bamboozled by them. So you'll stop doing. It's really into a wine, but the problem with wine is that wine is full of literally nerdy people, obsessive people like me. And so wine, almost more than any other subject, has a lot of bloggers. There's a lot of wine bloggers out there. I read Jancis Robinson, who's a famous wine writer, and Jamie Good, who's a slightly less famous. I don't read any other bloggers. And that's the only thing I can say is I'm good at wine. I know a lot about wine. I don't need to read all those bloggers to keep up with the wine world. All that personal opinion is mainly hot air, isn't it? But it's you're in the technical world, and it'd be really interesting to see how it evolves. Do you see, Sam, any big changes in the way that not just reviews, but in the way that sort of information about stuff is being disseminated in the next few years, or do you think it's just going to carry on like it is now?
There's one very, very big change that's happening now, and Google have just released their version of it, the Google Home, where it's in the same way to Amazon's Alexa. The AI is the home assistant, because at the moment,
AI?
Artificial intelligence, machine learning, that sort of thing. It's at the moment, if you want to find a good restaurant, you go onto Google and you search best restaurant in Huntingdon, and you get a list, and you have to personally decide based on reviews and what your preference is. now with what's coming out with these home systems, as they're called, it's now deciding for you. So you say to Google, find me the best restaurant within Huntingdon, and it will pick a restaurant for you. And say, right, this is the best restaurant that we recommend based on your previous preferences or based on your previous search history. And so therefore you're not even getting a choice. The machine is actually deciding for you.
Well, will people accept that, do you think?
I think that a lot of the young generation who are growing up with this technology, they just trust that technology must be right. They trust that Google must know me well enough to be able to pick the best restaurant.
Yeah.
Don't underestimate how lazy old people are as well.
So somebody saying the best, you just go,
There will be occasions.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Why not?
And
We all do it about things we
it's,
don't know.
it's great because you just say book.
Yeah.
It's done.
Well, especially if it does that for you as well.
Yeah.
And if it's right a few times, you then have complete trust in it. And you then say, okay, yeah, I'll go with that one.
And therefore you never try anything new because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy the whole time.
Yeah.
It just keeps giving
It makes
you
it
stuff
stuff
it knows you like.
Because it knows and you say,
Yeah.
the best restaurant in Huntsbridge that I've not been to yet. and it'll know all the ones you've been to.
But this will apply with other things too. Will it do? I mean, there's no reason why you shouldn't. If you put in HR consultant Huntingdon instead of now a rather random selection, depending on which SEO operator you had looking after your little website comes up in future, then Google will probably do a lot of that work anyway. Will it?
Well, exactly, and it's all going to be based on your brand reputation. So all these reviews that we're talking about, Google at the moment is collecting all those reviews. It crawls TripAdvisor, it looks at its own reviews on all these different.
It's not just. I thought I'm restaurant obsessed, obviously, so I assumed that. But when I've just been in Verona, and we had a real laugh looking at all the other things that were reviewed in Verona. Bridges are a big one, actually. The bridges in Verona are lovely, really good. But you wouldn't believe I think there's about 5,500 reviews of the Castelvecchio Bridge in Verona, and they tend to say, "Lovely old bridge." People haven't got a lot to add to the Lonely Planet Gothenburg version of the bridge, but they want to put their opinions up there. Really good. And occasionally they give it like 3 stars. Slightly disappointed bridge. Oh, bridge, what are they doing that day? So, sort of.
Can I add a bit of hope actually, in that the artificial intelligence will actually see that reviewer always gives bad ones and will correct.
Yeah.
So, to a certain extent, you're going to get a battle.
Arguably, that's at a later stage when it kind of gathers that amount of intelligence on somebody. There's always going to be people that put a few bad reviews and can knock things off.
That just puts so much pressure on businesses though, doesn't it, to perform and to make sure they're not getting TripAdvisor.
I mean, in many ways it's kind of a good thing because it used to be that you have your website which you put all your testimonials on and you paint up so that your business looks amazing. Whereas actually the quality of your business might not be so good. Because you're more focused on the marketing rather than your actual quality of your product. Whereas actually the reviews element and the social media element brings the two together and it makes your digital presence more real and more representative of your business. So it has its advantages and disadvantages.
It can bring things down a little bit to the lowest common denominator though, can't it? I mean, I found actually it was in Italy, so this was a few years ago, previous times in Italy, and we were in a famous Italian town, so you're looking at TripAdvisor reviews, just the restaurants that people have recommended or you've read about, and by the end of the trip, you realise that actually the reviews, the restaurants that got 5 stars were not the best restaurants. The best restaurants got very mixed reviews, and it's mainly because in this particular very touristy town, a lot of American reviewers, and American reviewers don't like restaurants where the menu's not written in English. Actually, the very best Italian restaurants, the menu is not written in English, because they don't need your American's business, they're really happy with the locals' business, and we all know that's an old cliche, isn't it, where all the locals go. Tends to be, not always, but tends to be really, really good. So, it took quite a long time to work all this out. So, you can't always believe even, I mean, this sounds very undemocratic, but you can't always believe what all the people are saying. People sometimes vote for the wrong result.
And on that note, and of course, it